Quail are known as the gateway animal to raising animals, to homesteading with animals, farming with animals, and they're even more well kept than chickens sometimes, and honestly for good reason. They're basically a mini chicken. They lay eggs, you can get really delicious meat out of them, and they're smaller. They take up a lot less space, and there usually isn't as many city laws around them. I've heard of people raising quail on balconies in New York City, and honestly, it blows my mind that people do that, but you can. You can raise quail on a porch, patio, or in a Cooper barn. And today we're gonna break down everything that I have learned in the years that I've been raising quail. A lot of people have been asking about a full video on just like a 101 tips and tricks on raising quail. So we're gonna start all the way from actually purchasing your quail until honestly every knowledge item that I have. So grab your favorite coffee, tea, beverage, whatever you fancy at this moment, maybe even just a cookie or brownie, and sit down because we're gonna dive straight into it. The first thing to think about is how you're actually going to be purchasing your quail or getting your quail to your homestead. We were lucky enough that we did have some friends that did have quail on their porches in upstate New York, and they were kind of done raising them, so we actually were gifted some adult quail at the very beginning, and this really helped set us up. They gave us some feed, some bedding, and some different supplies that helped us get started with quail. But the best way that you're usually going to get quail is by egg. Now, you can buy eggs from different hatcheries. There's a lot of different hatcheries online that are going to be awesome ways to obtain your eggs. We've also purchased a lot of eggs on Etsy. I've heard you can get them on Craigslist, eBay. We've also done some bartering. So we've bartered out some of our rabbits for quail eggs, and we've incubated our own. So the really important thing is when you are looking up the quail eggs, you just want to make sure that you could actually raise the quail, so they're going to be fertile eggs. And you can usually see when you purchase the quail eggs what their hatch rate is. The higher the hatch rate, obviously, that means the more baby quails you'll actually get out of it. So I definitely suggest just looking into that, reading some reviews, especially if you end up purchasing on Etsy. You'll be able to read a lot of the reviews about the seller and what other people's hatch rates were and different things like that. The one thing about buying them from a direct seller, so like Etsy, Craigslist, any Facebook groups or anything like that, sometimes you might not get all the same type of quails. So we have Quail, but we have a wide different variety of them. So we have some blue egg layers, we have some Spanish ones, Italian quail, all Quail, but there's just a different mixture, so they're not as purebred. Something to think about as you decide to get your quail. But they're gonna come in a little egg, and you're gonna be able to incubate them out. We've done a ton of videos on the incubation and hatching of our quail. We use a Nurturite 360 incubator. I'm gonna link all of the supplies that we use below, so definitely check them out if you're interested in getting started. We've had a lot of great success with all of these. I mentioned that we have quail at our homestead, and probably the most common quail breeds for raising for egg production are going to be and bobwhite quail. Bobwhite quail definitely have a longer time for them to actually mature. It takes them a little longer to incubate, and it's going to take them a little bit longer to actually start laying eggs and be able to fertilize those. So it does make people not always go towards bobwhite quail, but they're a really great quail. I definitely suggest doing some more research, but we really love our quail, and as I said earlier, there are so many different types of quail. There's so many different breeds. It's honestly just like chicken, how there's so many different types of chicken, and they crossbreed them, and there's just a lot. But in my research, I found that the Faro D1 quail is a much larger quail, as well as a really hefty layer. They're gonna lay around 300 eggs per year. So if this is something that interests you, I definitely suggest looking into that type of Coternic quail. Outside of that, we really have a large variety of quail in our coop. We have a lot of different egg colors that we like, which is really fun and exciting. We really wanted some blue egg layers in there, so I really made sure to purchase Coternic quail that could lay those different types of eggs, and it's fun seeing all of the different designs when you pick out their eggs in the morning. The next thing to think about is actually the food and water that you're going to be giving your quail. Now, quail are notorious for being really messy eaters. Honestly, they will take their food and just put it everywhere. So I definitely choose a feeder that's for quail because they're much better and they usually will be less likely to be flying all around. I also suggest getting a watering system that you can have be much larger. You can use a chicken water or chick water. That's what we use, and we end up filling it up. Or you can do an automated system as well. And this way you don't really have to go in and water and feed them every single day, but they are going to need fresh water and feed every day. The feed that we use with our quail is actually a high protein game bird feed that we get from Nature Serve. It's a really great feed. I definitely suggest making sure that you get the crumble version of this. This way, they're really small birds, they'll be able to eat it. When they are younger, you might actually need to make it even smaller, so put it in your blender or a food processor and get it just really tiny for them so that their tiny little beaks will be able to eat it. You can also make sure to put in similar things that you would with chickens so that they do develop some better eggshells. So think like oyster shells or a higher calcium diet in order to get those harder shells. Behind me is where we have our quail for the winter right now. What's really great about this is we actually have this cage set up inside of our chicken coop. So all of their droppings and waste will drop down into the coop. All of our chickens can go through it, peck around, also eat up any of the feed that they drop through here. So you're just kind of giving it around. They're all like running around right now, I think, because I'm out here and my hands around. But there's really two ways that you can raise quail, or two different environments that you can be raising them in. You can either choose to put them in cages, and when you are putting them in cages, you want to make sure that it is less than 2 feet high. This is because quail will pop up if they get afraid, which basically means that they will hit their head, they will get pretty hurt if they do pop up and it is different than that. Or you could raise them in an atrium style where you want to have really high ceilings in case they do pop up, they won't actually hit them. So something to think about there. If you do have any atrium style, the quail will learn to forage in the ground, similar to chickens, so they'll scratch and forage around in there. If you have them in a cage type setting, you will need to make sure that you're providing food and water and they're able to freely eat and feed in here. Keep in mind when raising your quail that you want to keep them in a safe space, that they are protected from any predators. And even chickens or turkeys, anything else that you're raising could be a predator because they're so different in size. So keeping them separated is going to be key. We have ours in our chicken coop, but everything is closed up and they are lifted above the ground, so the chicken cannot reach them, which is really vital in making sure that they are safe in there. Another thing to think about is the temperature and environment that you have them in. We have Coternic quail. I believe bobwhite quail are also a very hardy quail. So do some research, figure out where you live and what types of quails will be best for that environment. But if you do have a colder environment, then you want to make sure to have a hardier breed of quail. And always make sure that you keep an area that's going to be dry. So this is plastic up here. There's also a top on here. So they are kept dry all year long. There's areas for ventilation to come through, but then we also have this back panel here that we've closed off, and this is a wind-free zone for them to hang out and lay in. Now, if you do have female quail and you're looking to have your own set of eggs that you want to have out of there, the females, you could give them some boxes, some nesting boxes similar to chickens, and they can lay eggs in there, although they really don't care and they will lay eggs anywhere. We use the hatching time quail cages, and what's really great about these is there's actually an egg drop in it, so you can collect the eggs and they really lay them anywhere. But if you want your quail to actually hatch out their own quail, you want to provide a space where they can actually sit on them and have a broodier quail hen that's gonna hatch out their own eggs. Otherwise, you will need to incubate those guys. The two main reasons that people will want to homestead quail and why we got into homesteading quail is their meat as well as their egg production. Now, they are a small bird, but they're a delicious bird. They're a big delicacy in restaurants. So if you are able to sell the meat of your quail, you can probably churn out a pretty good penny. It's also really delicious. There's a lot of great recipes out there that you can try. We've tried some Asian style quail and it was delicious, as well as their eggs. Their eggs are gonna be amazing, especially in this egg apocalypse that's going on right now. Not only are there not that many laws, but they don't require that much space. Their eggs are delicious. They're packed with nutrients. They do have cholesterol, which I've read in some comments people are afraid about, but it is the good cholesterol, and it's gonna make your levels of bad cholesterol go down. So definitely think about that. And some people find that quail eggs can have a healing effect. I've done a whole video on a lot of the benefits of quail eggs. I'll also link that down below because it's a really good listen and there's some crazy things to learn about it. And you will find that around 2 to 3 quail eggs are gonna equal around 1 chicken egg, and they're really fun. If you have kids, they love the tiny eggs. It's a really fun thing to have. So really, really cool there. And again, super easy to raise. But those aren't the only 2 reasons that people will get and keep quail. They also have beautiful feathers depending on the breed that you choose for your homestead. They fall out, some of the feathers, around your property, so you don't even need to be like pulling them off of them. But these are really great for DIY projects, as well as if you're a fisherman and you want to make your own lures. I said this a little bit earlier, but they are an amazing source for manure. They're always dropping fresh manure out of here into our chicken coop, which our chickens then scratch through, and we end up composting everything together and being able to provide fresh manure for our garden. Another great uses for quail is going to be training your dogs for hunting. Although I have not done this and we do not have hunting dogs, they're more like cuddle dogs. This could be something that you could try, and we've seen people that have done it before. That's really it about quail. There's honestly so much. I have a full playlist that you're going to want to check out here next, and we'll see you guys again next time. Bye.